Welcome to my daily diary. I am going to tell you this time what I did from the days of Sunday, the 28th of July, through Friday, the 2nd of August of 2024. Very full days, very busy days, as if you follow these broadcasts, you know most of my days are. So Sunday the 28th, I began the day in Palm Beach, Florida, where the night before had just concluded the Turning Point USA Believers Summit. No, it hadn't concluded the night before, actually. It was still continuing on Sunday. And so in the morning, I jumped right into it and began networking once again with all the participants at the Believers Summit, as it was called, at the Palm Beach County Convention Center. So I interacted with friends there, associates, colleagues, fellow patriots, believers, members of the Preach for Life family. Some of you were there. And just was networking, listening to some of the speeches, being in the exhibit area, being in Media Row, all during the course of most of the morning. Late morning, I had to leave, get in my car, drive back to Titusville. About 2.5 hours. I listened to some podcasts along the way and got ready for what I had to do in the afternoon. I got back here to my office and got ready to do a media interview. But before that, I set myself up in my office with some work I had to catch up on. Some of the things I had to do via email on Sunday the 28th included some messaging about early voting, some messaging to my staff about state election websites, some preparation for the January National Prayer Service that we run, some work on upcoming trips, some questions, whether there's questions from a priest that I needed to answer, some work in regard to the National Pro-Life Religious Council, which I head, legal cases that we can pursue against the pro-abortion industry, and approval of the electronic message that we send out to all our regional coordinators each month for the Silent No More campaign. Then at 10 minutes before 2, I had a live Newsmax interview from right here at this desk. Went on for that. And then continued working in my office, of course, being a Sunday, a little extra time for prayer, worship, and relaxation, but nevertheless had to get a lot of things done in preparation for the coming week and in follow-up to the events of the previous days. So I was here in my office the rest of that afternoon and evening. Monday, the 29th of July, I was back on the road. So got picked up like 4 in the morning to go to the airport, to Orlando Airport, where I caught a plane to Washington, D.C. Now, in the airport on the plane, I did some email work and computer work, and then I got there to D.C., went to my Washington, D.C. office, got on the phone right away with staff and checking in both in the Florida office and in the Washington office. Our office is right behind the Supreme Court. I got there, began doing some work with our Washington, D.C. staff person. Some of the issues dealing with on the emails and the computer concerned the following. Some follow-up to the Eucharistic Congress, where our Associate Director, Father Dennis Wild, was present. Some preparation for upcoming state marches for life. Preparation for the Good Shepherd Project, our online clergy training. Approval of an email blast going out to our list. Preparation of an article, an opinion piece for lifenews.com, which I sent and which they posted. The election videos that we post online. I was working with staff talking about upgrading and updating some of those. Opportunities for radio ads, preparation for the pro-life leadership meeting that we run, audios from the Republican convention, state election pages, set up for media interviews, email approval and newsletter approvals, Amendment 4 work, the pro-abortion amendment here in Florida, working to stop that, and communication with Dr. Ben Carson's staff. Those were some of the things I had to do on my computer. Meanwhile, my meetings, I had several different meetings and work sessions with our Washington, D.C. staff, and we went over many things that we had to plan for and do. So that was a good, solid work session all morning on the 29th. At 12 noon, I had an interview for the Jenna Ellis show, so I was interviewing with them over the computer for about a half hour. Then I had a meeting, in the late, I should say, back up for a moment. In the late morning began a meeting with the board of the National Pro-Life Religious Council. I'm the chairman of that, I'm the president of that group. So we met right there at our Washington offices, and I conducted that meeting the latter part of the morning. I did my interview at noon, then joined them for lunch, and then we continued our National Pro-Life Religious Council meeting until 2 o'clock. Then between 2 and 4, I worked again right there in our Washington office with our Washington, D.C. Staff person, and we did a lot of work there during those 2 hours. At which point we got into an Uber and went over to a nearby hotel where our executive director and our communications director and our youth outreach coordinator were already gathered, together with other pro-life leaders whom we welcomed for the quarterly meeting of what we call the 115 Forum. So these are national pro-life leaders that we gathered together, and we had our hospitality reception that night, as we always do. However, I had 2 national interviews in the midst of that. So I broke away from the gathering for a 6:15 interview with Ed Henry on Newsmax, and then an hour later I broke away again for a 7:15 interview with Grant Stinchfield on Real America's Voice. So I did those interviews from my hotel room and then went back to socializing with the pro-life leaders. A lot of good discussions with these leaders who are allies and comrades of ours, collaborators, some of them for decades. And I also taped a little quick interview with Emiliano, whose mom and dad are Chris and Joan Bell. Joan Andrews Bell is one of those peaceful pro-life activists who's in prison, and I asked Emiliano to tell our viewers, you might have seen this video on my social media, how his mom was doing. Tuesday, the 30th of July, was the leadership meeting. So I was up nice and early, eager to meet these pro-life leaders. Once again, did a little bit of work on my computer. I had to follow up on some things for the National Pro-Life Religious Council and for Turning Point USA, and the prayer talks that I gave at the Republican Convention. We're posting and distributing those. Florida pro-life event coming up in the spring that I'm involved in organizing. I had to do some communication about that, as well as some details about upcoming trips. Now, let me consult my schedule here, let you know what I did. We went to this leaders meeting. Okay, so the leaders were gathering, and what we do is we have various presentations from these various leaders. Now, Dr. Alveda King, that was another Priest for Life team member who was there, and I met with her about a number of business items. We had updates from all kinds of pro-life leaders, most of them there in person, some of them joining us by Zoom, talking about, among other things, the state ballot initiatives. I chatted with these leaders throughout the course of the day. We had a nice lunch together. The meeting continued until about 4:30 in the afternoon. At that point, we had, again, our executive director there and our youth outreach coordinator. So the 3 of us went to have a working dinner. We actually started talking about plans for January and the National Prayer Service that we coordinate. And we had a good, fruitful dinner, and then I came back. It wasn't too late. Went to bed early, and that was the 30th. Wednesday morning, the 31st, I was back on a plane. So early in the morning, I went over to the Washington Reagan Airport and caught a flight to Dallas, Texas. Why? Because I was gathering there with the Liberty pastors. So pastors from across the country. Now on the plane, as usual, I did some work. I had to approve another email blast. I had to do some travel preparations and plans for upcoming trips, approving monthly statements, going out to our regular donors, talking with staff about some data we're organizing in regard to our Rachel's Vineyard ministry, and an endorsement for a political candidate as well that I do in my personal capacity. Flew out to Dallas, was a good flight, landed there, had to meet with some Priests for Life advisors who are based in Dallas, so I had a good meeting there in the late morning. Had some lunch right there in Dallas, and then grabbed an Uber and went out to Frisco, Texas, not too far outside Dallas. And there, checked into a hotel and started meeting with pastors and patriots from across the country who were gathering by the hundreds for this 2.5-day conference for which I was a speaker. Began meeting with them, interacting with them, networking with them. Then, as the afternoon proceeded, they wanted me to do a podcast. So I went into the podcast interview room, took care of that, and then we went into the evening session. It was a dinner, buffet dinner, followed by a number of speeches, one of which I gave. I asked me to speak about how the church deals with the issue of abortion. So I gave that talk. It was very well received. It was a fantastic group. I was part of a panel with Q&A. It was just wonderful. So that was the conclusion of that evening as I continued networking with these pastors and other guests late into the evening. So let me make sure I don't miss anything here. Thursday, August 1st, that was continuing with this pastors' conference. So all day, as you catch the pattern by now when I go to these conferences, it's networking all day long. Literally from time I get up till the time I go to bed. Meeting, talking with pastors from every part of the country, having meals with them, comparing notes, having side meetings, making plans. One of these pastors met with me, wants me to be on the board of his ministry, and various things like that. So making plans for future trips and for interviews and programs and so forth. The conferences were going on, different speakers were addressing us, so I listened to some of those talks as well. Stepped aside for an 11 o'clock in the morning prayer call. Now, this was with representatives from across the country of the Republican Party. So they have me come on to these phone calls to lead prayer, to lead a devotional, to give a reflection, which I did, of course, in regard to dealing with the abortion issue. And they welcomed my remarks very warmly. I was on with them for about a half hour and then resumed my interaction with the various pastors and the events on the schedule for that day, which went right up until dinner time. Then we were free in the evening, so I went back to my room and plugged away at my computer at so many things that I had to catch up on. Some of those things being communication with our communications director, who's working on connecting with various media people for us, connecting with staff about revision of election videos, scripture clips, little clips that we send out on social media of my scripture commentary. One of our leaders that was at the meeting the previous day heads up a Jewish pro-life group, and so I had some communication about a legal brief that she had written. We want to disseminate that. Thank you data for Rachel's Vineyard, some communication about that, about our travelogue, final approvals of that. Leaders to the messages rather to the state leaders in states that are battling these pro-abortion amendments. We sent out special messaging to the national groups from those state leaders so that the national groups could send those messages to the people on their list in those states. Got that collaboration going on. Videos for social media, contact information for pro-life leaders, and the approval of thank you notes were some of the other things I dealt with my staff via email. The next morning, Friday, August 2nd, I was up early, got an early breakfast, and then I had an early interview. Real America's Voice wanted to talk to me. I got on their program at 7:45 a.m. A lot of these programs were follow-ups to that blasphemous portrayal of the Last Supper at the Olympics. What a disgrace. So I did the interview, then went down and continued all day interacting with the pastors, listening to those who were speaking, having all kinds of side meetings all day long, lunches, meals with them, and likewise, at a certain point, I stepped away to connect with my staff. I had, for example, a 2:30 meeting with one of our administrative team and things like that. Some of the things I dealt with on my computer as I stepped away to get some work done, especially in the later afternoon. We had a little bit of a break from the conference. So I was in communication with my staff, several meetings like with our social media director and with our finance director and other things like that, just to catch up on routine activities. But also some email work about upcoming Trump rallies and scheduling coverage of those, social media videos, preparation for our pastoral team meeting, an op-ed that our Associate Director, Father Wild, was working on. I gave some input into that. various items that I needed our public outreach coordinator to follow up on, people who called me that I needed her to get back to. The movie Unthinkable, which I am in, Abby Johnson's latest film, some communication about that. Approval of thank you notes going out to our donors, approval of an email blast going out to our full list, scheduling administrative meetings, connecting with this group called My Faith Votes. We've been in communication with them for many years, but they're going to have me on one of their online meetings, and so I'm looking forward to that. And also placing some orders for new books. At 4:30 in the afternoon, I had an update call from one of our key administrative people, end of day update. And then went back downstairs and we had an evening gala. I went to the VIP reception at 5:30, was interacting with all these Liberty pastors from across the country and other ministry leaders that I interact with. Charlie Kirk was there, so I had a chat with Charlie, and he gave one of the speeches in the evening, and also had a chat with General Michael Flynn, great patriot, and he was there for these several days of meetings, and he gave a talk that night as well. So he and I chatted a little bit also. So there was the reception, there was the gala dinner, and again, just wonderful interaction with so many people late into the night, and then went to bed to get a good rest before leaving the next day. But the next day will be part of our next Daily Diary update. So I hope your days are fruitful. I love talking about the work the Lord has given me to do, and I thank so many of you for supporting us and making that work possible. We'll continue to keep you posted. We're an open book. We work for the Lord, and we're accountable to you as well. God bless you. We'll talk to you soon.